Buddy. Thank you so much for coming. I'm really excited to be here and to get to talk with Ehi and to hug you guys after and sign your books. I'm excited. And if you're not a hugger, I'm an auto hug. Like I just go in for it. So I was doing that with Prudence and she stuck her fist out. Go for that, baby. So she just stuck her fist out, and we just fist bumped, and it was all okay. So if you're not a hugger, just stick your fist out. I will not be offended at all. So anyway, thank you guys so much for having me. Thank you for coming. I'm so excited to be in conversation. So yeah, let's do this. Let's get it started.
She's thanking me for coming. And I'm like, listen, I'm a 2015 newsletter Kennedy Ryan OG baby.
She's OG. I was like, wow, okay. That's awesome.
Okay, well, thank you all for being here to celebrate Kennedy Ryan. Can we please get another round of applause? So, can't get enough. What a book.
Okay.
I have so many questions to ask you, like literally pages upon pages.
I see the pages. You know we only have 40 minutes.
I know. So let's go a little historical first.
Okay.
So we live in an era where people want things to be easily like categorized. So when we talk about romance, people are like, oh, I know there's a happy ever after, there's a third act breakup, maybe there's a little bit of a mess in the beginning, but there must be a meet cute, right? But you've always written such full-bodied, rich romances that like meet these two people who are just, they're on journeys of growth and they meet each other, and when it's like atoms colliding, right? Yeah. It's like, wow, I didn't know I needed you, right? But we have to watch them grow and fight for that romance to see if it's gonna happen or not, right? So can you talk to us about, how did you start writing romance?
Well, I think it started with my love for romance as a reader. You know, I started reading romance in the 8th grade, which I thought was really young. And then I was in New Orleans. We were in New Orleans 2 days ago. We're in a different city every day, so I have to think about it. This tour, whoa. We were in New Orleans, and I was with Regina Black, who, if you haven't read her, The Art of Scandal, she's fantastic as an author. And she was like, she was asking, when did you start reading? I was like, oh, I was really young, 8th grade. She goes, 5th grade. All right, youngin'. So I started reading romance in the 8th grade, and my mom couldn't stand it. She's a preacher, and she'd be like, don't be bringing the devil in my house, you know. Literally. So, and I've talked about this before, I had to smuggle romance novels into my house. You know, I like hid them under the mattress and in the closet and under the bed. I loved it so much, and my mom and I clashed all the time about it, so I just started like hiding it. And I didn't even tell her until I was in my 30s that I kept reading it. I was like 35. She's like, what? By the way, I'm writing it now too. So it starts there. You know, it starts with the fact that I loved to watch these two characters on a journey to love. And I think, like a lot of people, when I got to college, I started reading the serious books, you know, and I didn't have time for a lot of leisure reading I wanted just on my own. And it wasn't until much later that I came back to romance as a reader. And then I think so much of my life experiences influenced how I would approach it as a writer. Now, I've always been a writer. I started writing for my city newspaper when I was 17 years old. I'm sure it was breaking a law because I was like, it's child labor, you know, and then I got my degree in journalism. And so I've been writing in some form or fashion my whole life, but I never thought I would write fiction. And when I did approach fiction, and of course it was romance because that's my favorite genre, I wanted to know what the rules were so I could break them, you know? And what I mean by that is when you talk about romance, people will often say, I'm not even sure that Kennedy Ryan writes romance, you know, because sometimes it's like, it's something that they're not expecting to find in a romance novel. Because the only thing that's, by definition of the genre, the only thing you have to have a romance is a central love story and a happily ever after. And all my books have that. But my books can take detours, into things that people don't expect to find in a romance novel. And I'm like, well, that's your problem. But what I really mean by that, and I say this all the time, I think that people just underestimate what romance is capable of. Yes. They don't understand or they don't grasp what I believe is the best genre to have difficult conversations, to have maybe healing conversations where you're unpacking trauma, writing what I call, when you're talking about full body, what I write sometimes is trauma-informed fiction. And trauma-informed fiction, not all of it, but sometimes when I'm dealing with a painful situation, people are like, trauma! And I'm like, life, it's life. But trauma-informed, this is a very long answer to your question, I'm just realizing that.
Please.
And here's my thesis on,
Come with the word, please.
But I mean, trauma, when you're writing painful situations, trauma-informed fiction is when you in conversation with people who have actually lived those painful experiences or people who treat and help heal those painful experiences, inform your creative process. Like you have conversations with them, you do the research, and to make sure that it's accurate and that it's compassionate and that it's safe for people who have experienced those things especially. And I never write trauma-informed fiction without writing what's called trauma-responsive fiction. Because if you write something that's trauma-informed, you should write something that's trauma-responsive, and that's the track to healing. You know what I mean? And sometimes people don't expect that depth, that heft, that weight in a romance novel. And, addressing what you're saying, I think it's because fundamentally I don't see romance as simply escapist. Because people talk about romance as like this portal, and I've said this before, they talk about romance as a portal out of real life. And to me, romance is a portal into real life. Meaning, if a romance is written thoughtfully and accurately and with compassion and with understanding, it can actually inform life. Not in a way that gives you unrealistic expectations, but in a way that increases empathy, in a way that heals, in a way that opens your heart, in a way that, that provokes, that challenges. So I don't see romance strictly, and believe me, sometimes I'm like, I just want to see them bang for 150 pages. Like, I get it. We all want that sometimes. It's like sometimes I want potato chips, sometimes and I'm not saying that's junk food, but I'm saying you want different things at different times. And sometimes you want something like that. And I want that sometimes too. It's just not ever what I really write. And I think there's room for all of it. And to me, romance is the safest landscape for that because we are guaranteed a happily ever after. So we can talk about painful things. We can talk about challenging things. We can talk about even having conversations that are quote unquote political or quote unquote controversial or quote unquote whatever. And often when people say things are political, they're really just polemicizing humanity because they don't want you to talk about it. Because they're like, if I label this politics, she'll shut up. If I label this politics, we won't talk about it. And I don't do that in my work, So I hope that gets to some of what you're talking about.
That gets to, okay. Somebody call Kennedy's mother because that was preaching. A whole word, honestly, because that's actually how I came to, is your work was healing for me. Your work was one of the first times I'd ever seen somebody take all of this and people and mess and acknowledge that it happens, but then also acknowledge that you can still love and someone can still know you and see you in all of that and still be like, I still choose you.
Yes. And that's what's amazing. And I think, and this, I don't want to get into later questions because I don't know if this will be later questions. But when you talk about, I've been through these painful circumstances where someone can still love me, someone could choose me. For me and my brand of storytelling, that which is writing from the margins to the center, so often those people who are on the margins, Black, brown, fat, disabled, neurodiverse, bipolar, queer, we are so often relegated to the edges. So you're not often, or not all the time, more now, seeing at the center of a cultural narrative that those are the people who get the guy, or those are the people who get the girl, or those are the people who get the joy. If anything, real life, and this to me is escapist. I'm like, the fact that I'm giving you a happily ever after is escapist enough, because that is not the real world. But it's seeing that Because so often in real life, especially for those of us who are relegated to the margins, the black, the brown, the fat, the queer, the neurodiverse, the disabled, the chronically ill, the all of that, in real life, the world is even, whether it is subliminally or explicitly telling us, you don't get good outcomes. Yep. Look, you're at the bottom of the, when you talk about maternal death, when you talk about generational wealth gaps, when you talk about all of these stats, you're at the bottom, And so in the world that I'm writing, you're at the top. You're at the center. You're guaranteed joy. You are worthy of a happily ever after. You are desired and you are celebrated. And that is the playground that is romance for me.
I'm having my own, I am, woo. Okay, composed. Wow, you have answered so many questions. I'm doing. I really didn't No, you have.
Okay.
But I think that the thing I want to say is you do it in such what I call a craft appreciative way. You do it in a way where these characters, these people feel real. They feel like they're your friend or your brother or your sister or you, and it's just amazing. And wow, thank you. Thank you. Okay, and now we're gonna dive into Can't Get Enough.
Okay.
I'm gonna try and do this without spoilers.
No
for those
spoilers.
of y'all
Who has read already? Okay. Oh, good. Not many. Okay, so we'll be very cognizant because they're like, I just got my book today, Okay, Kennedy. So we will definitely try our best to keep it spoiler free.
Yes, as much as possible. As tempting as it is, keep it spoiler free. All right. So Can't Get Enough is the final book in the Skyline series.
Yes,
you're holding
that's what they tell me. Yes.
Although
there apparently is a petition circulating on Threads to do another.
I'll be signing that petition. And we finally get to talk about Hendrix.
Yes.
Our girl, our rich auntie, our businesswoman, Miss Go, right?
Yeah.
So how are you feeling having written this book?
I feel great. I think for me, this third book is like a culmination. And if you've ever heard me talk about my approach to writing, I think of it as missional. Yeah. And what I mean by that is that I'm not just releasing a book, I'm sending a book on a mission. Yeah. And I have very specific things in mind for each book to accomplish. And that's not like New York Times, or that's not what I mean by accomplish. I mean accomplish inside of people. And so the first book, Before I Let Go, I was really, really focused on mental health, destigmatizing mental health, talking about, having conversations about therapy and grief and loss. And drilling down to destigmatize not just in general, but very specifically in marginalized communities, and then even more specifically in the Black community, and then most specifically Black men who need therapizing, right? Like all of us do. And so I really felt like, okay, that's what I wanted this book to accomplish. I think it's doing it based on the feedback that I get, based on the DMs and the messages that I get, based on the things, people saying, I'm going to therapy now, I'm trying antidepressants, I finally got my husband or my partner to go to therapy. For me, that is my first metric of success. Is not, making a list or anything like that, but impact. That's how I first measure success. And so how I first measure success is you. You are my first measure of success. If these books are impacting you, if they are cratering in your hearts and leaving an impression, that is my first metric of success. And so I felt that with Before I Let Go, and for This Could Be Us, it was all about self-actualization. It was all about taking power back. It was all about empowering. It was all about, if you're in a place, dating yourself. First, and even if you're married, whatever, first loving yourself, using that as a foundation for every other kind of love in your life, all of that. I mean, what was unusual about that as a romance is that for half the book, she's dating herself, and they're like, is there a love interest? Yes, her, Yes. She is her own love interest, And I think even at one time in that book, she says, I want to be the love of my own life. Yes. So that was that book, and I heard so much from people that they got that, and now I love this. People will tag me like #SoledadDate, and they will, send me a photo, like post a photo of them at a table by themselves, like enjoying themselves, which I love. And so with this book, with Can't Get Enough, I really had been waiting to write Hendrix, because Hendrix is such, there's so much about Hendrix that interrogates what we think a happily ever after is. You know, because when you're thinking about, I mean, you know, most people when they're talking about a romance novel, ooh, I want that bonus epilogue, you know, with the wedding and the babies. You know, and Hendrix is like, that ain't my bonus epilogue, you know, because she's childless by choice, which is something I was really looking forward to writing, because more and more women are making that choice, and it's a valid choice. I wanted to have the conversation about how we as women should not be defined by our capacity to reproduce. You know, we should not be defined by our wombs. I wanted to write Hendrix's story in an era when our bodily agency is being challenged, when we're being stripped of our rights when it comes to our bodies. And that we get to move through, we get to make the decisions about this body as we move through this life. And that's a lot of what Hendrix's story is about, but that's not it. You know, Hendrix is, and this is not spoilery because it's like literally in the blurb. Right. You know, that she's caring for an aging parent, it's Alzheimer's, and that is a challenge in and of itself. Of course, she's a 40-year-old woman. I like writing mature women because culture tries to erase us so early. It's like, you're 30, okay, like get behind a plant somewhere, you know? And so I like writing mature characters. All three of those women are like now, you know, 40 years old or, you know, a little older. And Hendrix, and really I wanted to write a safe place, a soft place for Hendrix to land. It is definitely something, she is probably the boldest character in the whole series, you know, and in the first two books, you know, especially in book one, because book one is so heavy. If you haven't read it, there's like a lot of heavy themes. All of these books have content warnings, so just so you know, most of my books have content warnings. So, you know, there's this heaviness, especially in Before I Let Go, and a lot of times Hendrix is comic relief. You know, it's like, woo, it's getting heavy, woo, it's getting heavy, and then Hendrix says something outrageous, and we're laughing, you know, and then it's like, okay, we can breathe. And in the second book, you know, she's really there for, you see what an incredible friend she is, you know, because Soledad loses everything. And Hendrix and Yasmin are both there really to help build her up, but we see it so hands-on with Hendrix. And so in this story, I really wanted her to be the center. You know, she has been everyone else's support. I wanted her to be the center. It's important to me that she's a brown-skinned woman, that she's a plus-size woman. She's a 40-year-old woman. I wanted to see her at the center of the story, and it is what I call a chasing romance. And what I mean by that is that her love interest is so, all of the things that I just mentioned, whether it's 40-year-old, you know, you're talking about ageism, whether it's, you know, brown skin, we're talking about colorism, or, you know, it's all of those things, fat phobia, all of those things that she is, are in defiance to what our standard of, you know, the conventional, the mainstream standard of beauty is. So she's sitting at the center in defiance of all of that, not looking like any of that. And yet, the most eligible, you know, the most sought after character, you know, in the whole, you know, possibly the most eligible character in the whole series wants this one. Yes. You know, and chases her, not stalks. If you, I am not taking your kidnap romances away. If you want to see her stuffed in a trunk and spit on, that's okay. Do that. He can stuff her in the trunk. He can tie her to a pole. He can spit on her. I am not taking your stalker romances away. You can have it all, right? You can have it all. But this is not a stalker romance. Right. I'm making that distinction. It's a chasing romance. It's a pursuing romance. Right. So he is in from the moment he sees her, he is captivated. And he talked about how, yes, she's beautiful on the outside, but there is like this radiance that comes from the inside of her. And what I love about this story, and I'm not going to give too much away, it's in the blurb, you know, that he is a tech kind of mogul. And he's almost a billionaire, and I really wanted to, in this story, subvert a lot of what we think about as a billionaire. Yes. And when you read it, you'll see what I mean. But there are just things that I did to kind of subvert what you think this person would be and how you think this person would move and behave. And so I really wanted to see her pursued, captivated, and I really wanted him to say, you're complete. You know, because Hendrix is like, I don't need a trash ass man. I don't need a trash ass woman. I don't need anyone in my life who is going to detract from this incredible big existence I have built for myself. Yeah. And she's like, and I'm just gonna tell you this one line, it's not super spoilery, but she's like, somebody said something about turning 40, and she's like, I love being 40. When I was in my 20s, I was in the streets. When I was in my 30s, I was asking all these questions. I was confused. Yes. I'm 40. I can finally afford myself.
Yes.
And then she's like, as far as kids are concerned, a partner. She says this. These are her words, not mine. She goes, I can get dick whenever I want. So she's like, bases covered.
Yes.
And so what I don't need is somebody to come into my life who needs to diminish me to make himself feel bigger. And she's like, what I don't need is someone who is insecure, so insecure they want to squash my light so they can shine. And so she does not want someone to come into her life and detract. And so many of the relationships that she's seen and so many of the love interests that she's seen have done just that. Yes. And so she's like, I'll wait, or maybe I'll never. Right. But I am building a life that I can enjoy. And so when Maverick comes into this, he recognizes, oh, she doesn't need me. Yes. She's got her own money. She's got her own dreams. She's got her own goals. She's got friends. She's got family. So what am I adding to the equation? And it's other things. Yes. It's softness. It's kindness. It's empathy. It's seeing her so clearly. When the world sees just kind of one thing, he's like, I want the 360. Like, I want to see all around and in. And so that's how I think about this story, And there's a lot of other things to it, but I'll let you discover that for yourself.
No, I highlighted that section multiple times, like, yes.
You're like, oh, is this a hole I've just put in the page?
Woo! Oh, even before they officially met, when she hears his name at the beginning, I just got chills. I was like, whew, it's coming. And then when it happened, I was like, I promise I can see, but.
And it's messy, It's really a very messy kind of start to their relationship. So, but I just roll around in mess. Because life is that way,
Yes.
So, and you have to figure out, do I really want this? Is it worth, what I have to negotiate? Mm-hmm.
Ooh. No, I love that, and I love you for it, seriously. Well, you know what? Let's go on the high energy. I'll skip a question, and I'll come back to it later.
Whatever you want to do.
Okay. Let's talk about mess.
You said what?
Let's talk about mess.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about mess.
We do that.
So one thing that we end up talking about in this novel is girl code.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and I secretly think of it as don't even think about it or your edges will be snatched forever, right? So initially, the idea of girl code came from trying to have a sort of community mindset, trying to respect the people you cared about, your friends and family, while also at the same time being romantic pursuits are, things happen, right? But I think there's a way you talk about this in this book where you sort of lay everything out and people will come to their own conclusions, right? But Hendrix never really sort of just decides to just only do her and not care about people. She's very clear and very intentional about, I am doing this, but I'm also taking care of people. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, in the context of girl code specifically or just generally? Yeah, I think that Hendrix is an honorable person. Yeah. And I think that integrity is very important to her. Yeah. She is, she's your girl. She cracks up, but she has her own kind of code. And this goes into some kind of the mess when you first start because there are lines. And I think when you talk about girl code, and I want to be careful about how I talk about it because I don't want to spoil aspects of the story, but I really write into the gray of it. Yes. What is a girl code? Is it just because I've known you for a week, now, I can't, interact with someone you were in a relationship with for? And I think that she eventually draws very clear boundaries for herself. I think that girl code is honoring your relationships and understanding. When I think about friendship and relationship, I think of it concentrically. Yes. And what I mean by concentrically is, circles that fan out. Yeah. And so there's this tightest circle of friends, and like that is girl code.
Yeah.
There's no way ever, ever. And then even here, probably still never, ever, ever. Yeah. But I've known you not very long. We're not intimate, but I know of you, and we, work together. I think there are things that Hendrix has to negotiate in this story, based on her own code. And I think at a certain point, she has to decide, am I going to allow that to keep me from something that is rare and real? Right. And I think part of what I think mess does sometimes, like when something is really messy and it's keeping you like, oh my gosh, what are they gonna do? Is it really shows you how much you want it.
Yes.
And so for me, I am always writing with so much intention. Yeah. And most of my books don't start with like a character or like even, a plot. A lot of my books start with discourse. Yes. Like, what is it? Because I've talked about this before, how I see romance as like this Trojan horse to smuggle in discourse. So there's usually something I want to talk about. Yeah. So sometimes I don't know much about the character. I just know about the topic. Yeah. And when you write that way, it can get heavy. Yeah. Because it's like the story can get weighed down with your intentions and with, the discourse. And so as a writer, I'm like, I also want them sitting on the edge of their seats. I also want them fanning. I want them blushing. I want them giggling. I want them kicking their feet. All of those things, even as we're having discourse. So I'm always like, what am I going to inject into this story that's going to do both of those things? For example, in a story like Before I Let Go, which is heavier, and has all the depression, and then it's like all of a sudden the trope, there's only one bed. You're like, oh, here we go, and with this one, it's like there's all of this intention, and this is a very prescient book. There's there's some discourse about equity and inclusion in here, which I started writing way before kind of all of that's happening now had even happened, so because I've been writing this book for over a year and a half, by the time it comes out, it's far away. So I wrote all of that long before. And so you've got all this stuff, and then I'm like, what is going to keep them on the edge of their seats? What's going to make them gasp and clutch their pearls and, all of that? And I was like, oh, what if it's forbidden? What if it's something, it's like that stove that you're like, oh, it's so hot. Oh, I'm not going to touch it. Oh, I got to see, so I think that's a part of it, is injecting some of the kind of tropes and some of the kind of like themes that really hook us and keep our attention and keep us gasping and guessing. I think that the element of the girl code and the forbidden romance and all of that is a part of how we lift the story some, because it can get weighted with intention. That's kind of how you kind of levitate it a little bit.
Well, you were chefing in this one, I'm telling you that. So, Hendrix is now, so she's a businesswoman. Yes. She runs a venture capital fund, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Yeah. She is a friend. She has goals. She has dreams. She has all of these things. Yeah. But also, and this was like, honestly, I had to take a moment at times, and I just cried. I had moments where I was rolling over on the floor. I had moments where
I would love to see footage of that.
No, my husband was just like, okay. But she is now in a position where she's now becoming a caretaker. Yeah. Right? Caretaker. And it's not, one of the things that I think about so often is we talk about tropes, right? Yeah. And people tend to have expectations of someone who's a caretaker, especially when a Black woman is a caretaker, right? There's certain expectations of what that looks like and all of that, right? Yeah. And I really love how you negotiate that in this book, and how you really bring forth like Hendrix, like goals and dreams and aspirations, but also this, right? So can you talk to us about why was it so important to really touch on this topic and really show not just Hendrix, but like the community that comes into the caretaking in this way?
Yeah, and I think you just said, talking about these things, but also this. And I think most of life is also this. Yeah. Meaning I am going to college, or I'm going to school, or I'm going, I'm working a job, or I'm doing this, and then also this. Like, then cancer hits, or then this hits. Like, life does not wait for you to finish this phase. Yeah. And it's like, okay, life is like, okay, she's having a really hard time right now in school, so I'm gonna let her get through that. And then there's gonna be this diagnosis. It's not like that. It's like you're doing you're doing this, and then this thing hits, and you have to figure out, am I still gonna do this? And still do this, and it becomes a negotiation with yourself and with your responsibilities. Hendrix is living in Atlanta. Her business, her life is in Atlanta. Her mom, who requires a lot of care, is not in Atlanta and does not want to leave, and so it becomes, and I should say that a big part of my creative process is research, always, and that's probably just my journalism background, but I would probably say 60% of my creative process is interview, reading books, and doing research and pulling data, and then the last 40% of the project is like, oh, it's time to type, and so this book was no different, and I interviewed so many family members who had taken care of loved ones who have degenerative or progressively degenerative, that's redundant, but diseases like Parkinson's, like Alzheimer's or some form of dementia. And my own grandmother passed away from complications of dementia in September. And so I interviewed my mom, for this book. She and my aunt became my grandmother's primary caregivers. And so I kind of had a front row seat for what that looks like. She lived with my aunt, and so when that happens, there's a lot that you give up in your life, and you have to figure out what are the things that I really am going to fight to hold on to, and that's what Hendrix is negotiating. And then just most of the people I talk to about it, and including my mom, and including me just observing my grandmother and her journey with dementia, they describe it as like this ongoing grieving. Because it's not like someone's ripped from you. It's like pieces of them, are taken, day after day after day. They lose a memory, they lose a name, they lose, they just start losing ongoing. And they're losing and you're grieving as you go. And most people I talked with, it is difficult, but they saw it as a privilege, because this is someone who took such good care of me. And now it's time for me to take such good care of them. And I definitely think that is the mandate that Hendrix has. Hendrix is an only child. And so when you're an only child and it falls to you, how do you negotiate that? And at the same time, Hendrix has these huge dreams, these huge ambitions, these huge goals. And part of how she does it all is what you're talking about, is this community of people who come around her. Her mother, like if you listen to I'm just getting into this, but if you listen to each book has a playlist, right? All my books have playlists. And when in the back of your book, the book that you guys just got, there's a QR code that takes you to the playlist. It is in Apple Play, like Apple Music. Everybody, I had it this year for the first time. Everybody's like, why is it only Spotify? So it's Spotify and Apple Music. But you'll see Beyonce's Thick or something right beside Church Girl, right beside Kirk Franklin's Melodies from Heaven. You're like, what is this playlist? Yes. Is this BB and CeCe Winans and Doechii? What is going on? Literally. And a part of that is because Hendrix is a church girl. She grew up in church. She grew up and Hendrix, there's so much of me and my experience in Hendrix. Yeah. There's Southern and there's country, right? I'm country. I am from, not rural. Woo! Carolina,
so,
right?
So you knew that Cowboy Carter was for you, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm from rural North Carolina, and Hendrix is too. Yeah. And so this book reflects that experience. She grows up in the Black church, and we were talking about this one scene where first of all, if you have an older relative at all, they are on speakerphone all the time. Exactly. Like every conversation is on speakerphone. They're walking through the house. I'm like, Mom, why do we all have to hear? But it's like she's on speaker. She's like, God is good, all the time, all the time. God. You see? And it's like the thing I love about stories like this is you recognize yourself. You recognize your experience. Like when you see that on the page, you're saying it yourself. It's a call and response that's familiar to a lot of people. And so Hendrix grows up in church. And we talked a little bit about this. She's negotiating her own faith. She's like, I get down. She's like, I don't have the things that I grew up with. Believing and being taught, I'm not sure that is what my life is going to look like, but I still respect that. Right. Hendrix talks about in the book, I'm not going to be cussing in my mama's house. I'm not going to have a man laid up in my mama's house. So she respects it. And I say that because there's this whole community of church people who her mother and her aunt are very much planted in, who come around her, and they're like, oh, we gonna bring the casseroles, we're gonna bring the food, we're gonna do this, what do you need? And I think it's reflective of, the kind of community that Hendrix has created. Because and we see that this was kind of a blueprint for what Hendrix created. And as I've gone through this series, I've begun to realize their friendship is reflective of how I grew up and how my mom, the friendships that my mom cultivated, and seeing that kind of sisterhood that's tight and that's like unbreakable, that you can really rely on, seeing my mom have that, replicating that in my life, and then saying, like, so much of healing is done in community. Like, so there are some things that you really can't do on your own. And I think this book charters that course. Every book, there is something that they can't do on their own. And it's in the circle of friendship that they find healing, provision, protection, safety, unconditional love. And in this book, I don't know if I referred to their friendship this way in the other books because my mind is a sieve, so I don't know. But I know in this book, we talk about their friendship, that friendship between those three women, as a platonic soulmate connection. And so,
Oh, whew. Kennedy, y'all. Just the word. But, then we've got Surfer Boy over here.
Oh, yeah.
Then we've got Mr. Maverick Bell.
Yeah.
Mav, wagwan.
Yeah, wagwan.
He's just like, do I have any Top Boy lovers in the audience? Woo, The Wire, anybody?
The Wire, yes.
Y'all, the best
The Wire
show?
walked so Top Boy could run.
Yes! Yes. Literally, yes.
Yes,
I
literally,
actually
yes.
once, weirdly enough, made a friend, because I was talking about The Wire with another friend, and this woman runs up and she's just like, that's the best show ever on television.
It's the best show ever. I don't trust people who are like, The Wire's not in my top 25. I mean, if you've never watched it, that's one thing. But if you've watched The Wire and it's not in your top 25, side eye. Sorry, if that's you, we can still be friends.
But can we?
Why?
But we've got Maverick, who, he's such an interesting character. And I think about so much, like, you really push against expectations so much in so many ways. Because Maverick is an almost billionaire, asterisk, right? He's somebody who is driven. He's someone who, he has his goals. And I'm not going to spoil, like, how he affects people in his life. Because he's a force, right? In so many ways. And at the same time, he is caring and he's loving and he's somebody who just wants to sometimes just sit down and enjoy a drink and not have people hovering like buzzards next to him, right? Who wants to, like, call the person he loves or text them or like just find the thing that they love so he can learn to love it too. And he really gives that thing his full attention. He doesn't just do like, oh, I'm just doing this because she likes it. It's very much like, okay, she loves this, but I'm also seeing the value in this.
Yes.
And it's amazing to watch them come together and to watch him really be in pursuit of her and really continually affirming and continually saying, listen, I know. And can we still do this?
Yes.
And please, can you talk to us about like developing Maverick as a character? I mean, I find all your male leads to be just such rich characters.
Right. I think a lot of people, when they talk about my books, they think of it as like it's women's fiction and romance. And I think the reason people sometimes lean into women's fiction is because it's usually the woman's journey. And it's like that TikTok sound, and he's there, which is not true, but usually the woman's journey is so center. And when I'm telling, a male, female, MF story, I always say I build the woman first, and then I build a man who is worthy of her, right? And so when I build the woman first, I begin to see what she needs, and I begin to see the kind of hero who would be fit to her. If you're thinking about, like, I don't know if you guys have ever read my book, Long Shot.
Yes.
But they're like, I have the t-shirt that says, I live to tell that I've read Long Shot. if you think about a hero like August, that hero would never be a good fit for someone like Hendrix.
Yes.
You know, and so they're very much fit. They're a great person,
Yes.
but not for her.
Yes.
And these heroes are not interchangeable. They are custom built to that woman. They are fit to that woman. And so Hendrix is someone who's so independent, so she doesn't need much, so she needs an equal.
Yes.
She needs someone who she sees can run beside her and who's not going to be asking her to run behind. And he is that.
Yeah.
What I always say is all of my heroes are feminists.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is a feminist is simply someone who believes in the equality between men and women.
Yes.
And that's what they are. That's kind of the foundation for I can see you clearly, I can esteem your dreams and your goals as just as important as mine. Yeah. That's where they're coming from with that. And if he wasn't, she wouldn't respect it or tolerate it. And so he is fit to her. And so I had a good time, you know, building him for her. Yeah. And he's considerate and he's hot, you know, which helps.
Yes.
Which definitely helps. But yeah, and I think the thing that really sometimes people overlook with character building is specificity. Because when you're building a world or where you're building a character, like when I'm writing story, I'm balancing two things. The universality of humanity, which means everybody's invited to the party. Everybody's invited to the party. Right. We all cry, we all grieve, we all have joy, we all have desires. Like those are human things that are universal to everyone. Right. And then you get into the specificity, the cultural specificity, the specificity of vocation, the specificity of, you know, likes and dislikes. Like something very specific is them liking Top Boy. Yes. Something very specific is him being like the quote unquote black surfer boy. Something very, you know, very specific is like his love for like chance and betting, and he has a betting app. You know, like you start to build out character with these real specificities. Yes. And a lot of times when I'm building characters with these specificities, sometimes people will write over a community or over an ethnicity or over whatever. Like I'm just going to kind of tell you this is who that person is, but then we're not going to deal with what that would mean in real life. And I am the opposite. And I'm like, this is who that person is. Now we're going to dig into what a person like that would bring into a story like this. So I'm never interested in checking at the door of the story their ethnicity, their community of origin, their political beliefs even. Like I don't check those things at the door, even if it's like polarizing, because that's who this character is and that's who they would be, you know, in the real world. I have a book called The Kingmaker, for example, and when you read The Kingmaker and she's an indigenous heroine, and you know that her mother, you know, she lost her mother as a missing and murdered indigenous woman. There's no way that she comes into that not being passionate about that issue, missing and murdered indigenous women. We open on a protest, a pipeline protest. You know, she has a position. You know, and the hero is a climate activist. You know, so what I'm talking about is not being afraid to write people from a very specific perspective because you're afraid that someone's not going to like it. You know, and I could say, well, half the country doesn't believe in climate change, you know, and I'm like, well, half the country's wrong, you know. You know, what I'm saying is it's like, I don't shy away from who these people would be in real life just because, you know, there are people who will be reading the books who don't agree with it. And so I have people all the time. I don't even know if this is far off.
No, please.
So sorry.
No, please.
But I have people all the time in my DMs, Kennedy, please, can we just enjoy your books? And I don't want to talk about politics. And you are sharing things to your stories that just disturb me, and I just don't agree with them. And you know, it's just you know, we have to all get along, and we have to we're, you know, one big happy family, you know, and I just don't have time for it. You know, I say all the time, I am not interested in being neutral. I am not interested in being your tofu writer who you can paint your own opinions onto. I have my own. I bring them to every story. And when people ask me not to do those things, they have fundamentally misunderstood why I am telling story. Because I am telling story to do those things. So when you say you have to take all that out, then I'm not interested. You know, because for me, I love romance, but it is something I build around. It is a context for the things that I actually want to talk about.
Yes.
You know, so when you ask me to strip those things out so that it's palpable for you, because you don't believe them, then you are asking me to set aside why I am writing. You know, Baldwin talks about writers as disruptors.
Yes.
And I am of the school of Baldwin. I believe in art as disruption.
Yes.
And I'm not saying everything has to be, but I'm saying there are certain times when art should be disruptive. There are certain times when you should not be quiet about certain things, and we are in those times. And so I am not interested in satisfying everyone. I'm not interested in everybody liking my books or even liking me. I am interested in being true to who I believe I'm supposed to be right now. I am interested in creative integrity. And so when people ask me to set those things aside to make them more comfortable, I'm saying, well, this is definitely the book that you should be reading. Because I think that art should challenge you to interrogate your beliefs, challenge you to interrogate your worldview.
Yes.
And also, yes, they kiss.
Yes.
They're swooning. All of that.
All of it. No, honestly, you are answering, like I said, I came with all these questions. You are answering all the questions. So please keep serving. Like, we're loving it, right? And really, they do kiss. Y'all, there's a coat room scene.
The coat room scene. There's a coat room scene. There's a coat room scene. But you know what? Here's the thing. Like when you write a scene like that, because when I was writing, I'm not going to spoil it. Like I'm not going to tell you where it is or what kind of coat room it is or anything like that. But it's like when you write a scene like the coat room scene. You know, I have a book called Blockshot.
Yes.
And they have a lot of like public shenanigans. And what that brings is like this sense of, I can't wait. You know, like, this is going to be so good. I can't wait to get home, or I can't wait to get into a private place. This has to happen right now, you know? And after it's over, you're like, wow, we really took a risk there. You know, but in the moment, it's just like, and this is what elevates the tension. This is what makes it feel urgent, this is the most important thing in the world to me right now, is how I'm connecting with this other person. And really what's that saying is, this is the most important person in the world to me right now. And when you inject that in the story, it heightens like the chemistry and the tension and the like, oh my gosh, are they gonna get caught?
I don't care. I was living for it, but we are running out of time, sadly, y'all. It's fine. There are so many. I think there's so many amazing things that you do in this book. There is the way you talk not just about, the world of venture capitalism, and which also intersects sort of with the world of philanthropy, right? But also about even like things like producing a show and what goes into it and who gets to, but also things like basketball teams and sports teams and who gets to be an owner and who doesn't. Right. So, I mean, it's all just phenomenal. It's really like, honestly, reading this book, I go back and read your books every single year when I'm like, I need a little something. I'll pull up some Kennedy and just be like, reading again. But I'll be revising this book again, and not just because of the coat room scene. Just letting you know. I think at this point, since we're kind of like running down on time, I'm going to just ask one more question, and I think we can get people ready for the signing. Okay. All right. Sorry.
Maniacal laughter.
Okay. Do you want me to ask you a fun question?
Yes.
Okay, I'll ask you a fun question.
Ask me a fun question.
Not that question. Okay. We have so many really like fun cameos. Like every single time I read your work, I'm always just like, look at that. Okay, so is there a cameo that you're excited for readers for this book?
Yes, and I don't want to give it away, because I want them to. What I see online, like in my stories and stuff, is people are like, oh my gosh, I just saw. You know, what is he doing here? What is she doing here? And that's for my OGs, you know, like the people who have read across my catalog. So if you have never read those books, those people, it doesn't disrupt your reading because you're just like, oh, that's just another character. But for someone who has read the Hoop series or who has read Grip or who has read, you know, Queen, or who has read whatever, when one of those characters from another series pops up here, you're just like, oh! It's like it also feels like they're real people, you know, which is what I always want my books to feel like. It's like, wait a minute, so that universe that she made, it's existing somewhere because how else would this person be here? You know, and so there are several of those. In this story. And I just hope, like my OGs, like people who have read across the catalog, I hope that you guys enjoy those because I was thinking about you when I did it, you know?
I'm seriously like the feet kicking and the squealing. Right now, I do a lot about reading this book. So everyone, thank you so much.
Thank you guys
for coming. We're about to get ready for this signing, but Kennedy Ryan, everyone, here in this